Welcome all. We are at Sonoma this weekend here, and we also had a great race in the Xfinity Series. And the reason why it was great, because my guy Shane Van Gisbergen getting the dub for the second straight week, being able to punt the rugby ball into the stands as well, which is great to see. Sonoma, 2.52 miles, not really long. And what we saw stats was I think Ed Jones was the one who tried to cut the stage, tried to jump a lot of positions and ended up getting lapped, and he was mid-pack. So what you could see here today is something similar to where you're going to have finishing position really just be very important. Like you're not going to be able to jump the pack by pitting early, before a stage. With these stage cautions back, you might have, saw that being a strategy, especially at COTA, where you're able to do that. The Circuit of the Americas in Texas, you're able to kind of pit, 2 to 3 laps before the stage ends, really just kind of hold position or even improve your position if you're not racing for playoff points or stage points, regardless. Like what we're going to see here is probably just a lot of train racing, and a lot of people might not like its stats, but go ahead and give a breakdown here of Sonoma. And honestly, I completely overlooked. How have you been?
I've been not too bad, man. Just been super busy getting these Sundays with MLB and then NASCAR. So I have not done my NASCAR line. I've done kind of preliminary lineups, but the what's going to go in there for the cash is not quite done yet. As I was finishing up MLB, I appreciate on Sunday though MLB gets their lineups in fairly early outside of Seattle right now, but not too many people playing against Wagons. But yeah, no, all is well. I hope you had a good time last night. I think you had a wedding last night, and everyone was looking for you in the Discord.
Oh yes, it was funny when you get called out at a wedding, not by the bride and groom, thankfully, but like the people at the table, like, "What are you looking at your phone for?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm trying to see if Shane Van Gisbergen is going to be in my lineup or not." Like, I can only do the one lineup yesterday, but yes, it was a great time. I'll just say it, but like. I tried to get drunk and I couldn't get drunk. That's like it was just one of those days where no matter how many shots of vodka you took, I couldn't get past that line.
Did you start drinking? Was it like day drinking? Did you start early in the day?
Yeah, 4 o'clock. Or 5 o'clock had wine to start. When the 3 glass of wine didn't hit, beer, three bottles of beer, then a whiskey sour, and then shots, and just couldn't get over that hump stats. And I was feeling great. But I wasn't drunk enough to really dance, and that's the real fun of weddings is being able to dance.
Yeah, the people who kind of sit on the sidelines at weddings, I'm not sure what they're thinking. I'm all about it. I'm with you. I was dancing last week. I'm an old guy, man, and I got a lot of friggin' sports injuries, knee injury, and everything. I've been taking this phenomenal stuff. I don't want to like promote it on air, but it's like all natural. I have never felt so good in my life, and I was out dancing last week. These girls they're like. Man, I can't believe you're moving this guy. I'm like, I can't believe you do that. I haven't moved like this in like 10 years. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I was back to my old Brooklyn club days, man. I was back to yeah. Heading into the city. The guys from New York know all the places, Sound Factory and Limelight. Yeah, the good old days when I was clubbing.
That is, were you a big clubber back in the day?
Not huge, but I used to go to, we used to go quite a bit. In the city, and then we go down to Miami during Memorial Day weekend. So that actually I don't even know if that's still a thing, but all the New York, like everyone from New York would go down to Miami to the clubs. It'd be the same bouncers and the same door people in New York would be down in South Beach for that weekend. So I had my time. I had my day.
That's kind of nice. Who's going to have this day today? It's going to be a guy, maybe Martin Truex, maybe Kyle Larson, or perhaps, you got, favorites like Tyler Reddick, Joey Logano. We got a lot of choices here, stats. This is not a very chalky board up top, it feels like. I can't really get my mind around that Logano being, 7-1, 7.5 to 1 on this slate. I don't really know what to do with this, right? Like, we were just talking about it before we went on the show. Like, are we going to be prioritizing finishing position more than place differential? And I think the answer is probably yes. What are you looking for in Sonoma today? What cautions are you expecting? Because last year they didn't do stage cautions, and this year they're bringing it back. What are you fully expecting from today's racing?
Well, the one thing you didn't mention was they repaved.
Yeah.
So I believe it's been like 20 years. So just throw that as another layer in here that we don't know necessarily what to expect. And it's going to take a little time, I think, for some of these guys to really adjust. So we'll see the guys who maybe the younger guys, maybe the guys who are a little better, guys like Larson, who can basically handle anything. Guys like that may be better. And all right, yeah. So I'm assuming you mean that's still a thing with the New Yorkers going down to South Beach. So yeah, I got good stories, but not for this podcast. But but we've got yeah, listen, like you mentioned, it's a road course. It's going to be a little different for those of you new. I think, is this our first road course this year?
No, we had Circuit of the Americas there in Texas. That's when McDowell had a power steering issue.
That's right.
Every lineup I locked McDowell that slate, and he had that power steering issue. I was killed.
Yeah, you got to be careful. So typically we like to look for these guys who kind of specialize. McDowell's a really good road course guy. We've got the ringers come in like AJ Allmendinger. So you've got those type of guys, but really, I think the younger guys now are really more proficient at handling all different sorts. So the older guys they're used to just running in circles, making left turns. I think a lot of these younger drivers are going to be pretty proficient. And like I said, with the repave, we're not quite sure exactly what we're going to get here today. So it should be an interesting race. Excuse me one.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, just
very interesting.
Cough. Oh, yeah, no, it should be good. Yeah.
And the one thing I kind of wanted to point out, too, because you mentioned Allmendinger being in this race, right? Like, why is Shane Van Gisbergen not taking that ride today, man? I know that was, planned out far in advance. And I think the reason was, we really want to see how he can do on ovals. We know what he can do on road courses or whatever. But Shane Van Gisbergen, fresh off the back of 2 Xfinity wins on the road courses here, I thought for sure that, all these road courses this season he'd be running. Obviously, I think they're giving the ride to Allmendinger, this week over Shane Van Gisbergen, but that doesn't mean we're missing out on all these guys from the Kiwi area. I mean, the New Zealand, Australia. You got 2 drivers from the Australia circuit, where I think it's Cam Waters and Will Brown both racing, and Shane Van Gisbergen did say he expects them to be competitive as well. So we're not completely missing out on the Australians here, or New Zealanders too, I guess I should say. I don't know if they are New Zealand or Australian for both those guys.
Well, that is not a good thing to mix up, man. Yeah. They will not be.
I will confirm that now.
Yeah. They will not. If there's any Aussies watching or Kiwis, they will not be happy with that mix up.
Australians today. Australians.
Yeah. But yeah, we've got it's what I'm looking at. I mean, we don't have a lot of laps, which you typically just don't have. This is one of the shorter. I think it is the shortest road course, so it's a little bit different. Yes. But you don't have a ton of laps, so we're not looking for a lot of Dom points. I think you're looking for maybe one Dom. You're going to have one Dom at least. That's about it in your lineups. I think when you're setting making the settings there on Sabre, so you're going to want to have one Dom in there. We just don't know. Typically road courses, again, if you're not all that familiar, these guys will spin out. They'll spin out on the turns. That's typically where you're going to see it, but they won't necessarily throw the caution flag because these guys will just kind of drive around them. They're not running at the speeds that, they're not running 180, 90 miles an hour like they may be on some of these other tracks. It's not as dangerous. A lot of times they'll be off the road. So you won't get the caution. We may get some wrecks or at least spin outs where guys have to move to the back, but you may not get as many cautions, which means that's really where, a lot of the place differential, or we say, the ability to pass is going to happen on restarts. That's where these guys are going to be able to jump they get to the first turn. They're going to be able to make a move there. Once they kind of spread out and they're racing and they go green for a few laps, it becomes really hard to pass guys. So what you've seen typically here, the winner of this race is typically somewhere in the top 14 starting positions, and especially in that top 10. And like you said, we're really looking for finish position, I think, more than place differential on this. So we're not going to get a lot of Dom points. We're not going to get a ton of place differential guys, I don't think, making it into the winning lineup. So we've had in the past here it hasn't been often, but we've had some big names, some high salary guys, some really good drivers start in the back, where those are normally just lock button type of plays. Doesn't necessarily play well here. So it's going to be, we're looking for these guys who we think can handle the repave, handle road courses really well, and they're going to have to finish up at the top. So this is going to be more of a handicapping, sports betting sort of DFS slate, in my opinion, as opposed to necessarily figuring out the place differential. Although we do have some pretty interesting place differential guys here this week. So, we'll jump into that as well.
Yeah, we were going to have that. I mean, we just saw, wanting to fade Logano, but he's cheap and stuff. My first run in projection stats, I kept getting Logano. I'm like, maybe I'm overrating these top 10. So I'm going to go ahead and nerf a lot of these, like, finishing position points, maybe a little bit. Nerf them. Still getting Logano, still getting Blaney and stuff. And what that does, I mean, what you look through this list, right? Like, I think there's maybe, 5 really good PD plays on this slate where you can just count them on one hand. And then it just kind of drops off to where you should be prioritizing finishing position. So it'll be very interesting. We're going to go ahead and get into SaberSim here. And if you guys aren't familiar here, you can get a membership here at Run for Your Sports and also get SaberSim access with it. Code RPS15 for 15% off your first purchase here. You don't have to just use it for NASCAR. You can use it for arguably its best sport, baseball. Baseball has been an absolute printer with SaberSim here. Stats, all about it. We also got NBA tonight. We got Formula One today. We got WNBA even today as well. We just have a whole bunch of sports that you can get in on. Again, code RPS15, 15% off your first purchase. Let's go ahead and get diving into this slate here. I'm going to go ahead and just bring it up on my end. Let me go ahead and create a new build here so we don't have anything mixed up. We're going to start with the studs. We're going to start at the top range here, and I'll also zoom in so it's easier to see. Actually, Stats, do you want to throw a curveball? Do you want to do starting position today, or do you want to do price?
Yeah, let's do it by the price. Let's keep it the way we've been doing it. I'm good with that.
All right, so let's go ahead and start. We're going to do 9K and up, right? Because we don't have that many drivers, 10K and up. Usually we have about 5 to 6. This time we only have 3. So we'll just dip down all the way to 9K. Really, the first guy in my lineups this week, I mean, it's Martin Truex. And you say the repave, right? You mentioned it. The repave definitely kind of throws a little bit of a curveball, but this has been one of Truex's best tracks. He won here last year. He is starting 21st. He kind of checks the box on the best place differential guys. However, if we're really prioritizing finishing position, well, that brings in guys like Tyler Reddick, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, and even throw in William Byron, who won a COTA earlier this year. You kind of have your choice here. I think the one guy that, I would say I'm ruling about 3 guys here. I don't really like Ty Gibbs. I'm fine with him if you really want to go in, but I'm ruling out Hamlin. Hamlin starting 25th. I don't really know how much he can improve upon that position. I know he's fine on road courses, but he needs to crack inside the top 12, I think, to really be in the winner. I'm not going to trust it. I mean, his odds are 35 to 1. They're clearly pegging him to not really be that competitive here. I don't really want to risk 9.2K of salary on a guy who, we're expecting it to be hard to pass, who has to pass here. I'd rather go down to guys like Chris Buescher and Austin Cindric, who we're going to get to a little bit later, over Denny Hamlin, even straight up. But that also brings into play guys like Christopher Bell, who, has the 15th best odds, but he's the 4th highest priced driver here. Starting 15th, people might see, he can move up the line a little bit, but really, he's projected to finish where he starts, and that's just not going to be good enough here. But really, Truex is the guy that I'm looking at the most. I just realized I didn't even have my own projections up. There they are. We're good now. But we do have Truex. Larson, I think, would be the second guy I'm looking at. Then it would be Reddick, then Byron. What about you here, Stats?
Yeah, so we got a few guys. I didn't go over who the favorites are as far as teams, and Hendrick is the favorite here by a decent amount, and Chevy is a minus 110 favorite in the race. So Chevy's kind of heavily favored over Ford and Toyota. So just keep that in mind. It's basically Hendrick and Chevy are the big favorites in this race. So I always like to look at the odds and when you start with the most expensive guy, kind of had this situation last week, and I went against my rule with Larson, where his odds weren't that good. I think they're right about in the same spot. I think Larson was plus 1,400 last week. Truex at plus 1,400 as well this week, and being the highest priced guy. I think that should lower his ownership, but typically my rule in all these sports is I see it in golf, any of these type of sports like this, the odds kind of take precedence to me. So a lot of times you get that inclination that you're like, you know what, I'm going to be able to get the best driver, or the guy who's priced at the highest price point, and he's going to be a little lower owned because the betting markets are where where all the liquidity is. That's the wisdom of the crowd. And for everything, I kind of use the betting markets as a guide. So I'm gonna be under on Truex for that reason. I think a lot of what we're worried about, he's been so good here, it's the repave. I think that's where people are questioning how well he's going to perform on this new track. Now, he needs a win, so we'll see. He's going to probably, I don't think he's playing for points. I think he's playing to try to win this race. And like I said, he knows this has been a good track for him, so he will be trying to win. That could play either way, but you're getting a decent, actually a very good place differential. But as I said, I don't know how much the place differential is going to matter. This will be more, I think Truex hits he's going to hit the winning lineup only if he gets himself in a really good finish position, more so than the place differential. As a cash play, that's a different story, but I think he's still going to have a strong finish here. And then you go to the other big place differential guy, I think, in this group is Hamlin, who, like you mentioned, when you look at the odds here, I think you have to be a little cautious with Hamlin. His projections are going to be good because of the place differential, but I think the same thing here. We're not going to focus too much on place differential. I think if you're playing one lineup, you want to do one, maybe two guys that you're, place differential type of plays, and really start focusing on guys you think could finish in the top five. I think that's where you have to look. And I don't know if Denny is a top five driver, at this course. So those are the two guys I think have the big place differential. Ty Gibbs, you don't seem too high on. I like the fact that he ran yesterday. Again, it's a repaved track, young driver. I think he's going to be the best driver with Gibbs today. So I'm a little higher, I think, on Gibbs with JGR than maybe you are today. And then Byron's a guy I'm looking at betting in the to win the race here today. So where was his odds now? Byron, and the odds have moved up. You can get plus 1,200 over at Caesars, but kind of shortened up a little bit at FanDuel to plus 900. Byron, I think I think that's a good price in the betting markets. I like him here in DFS as well. So I'm going to be looking at Byron. Larson, as I mentioned earlier, I think might be the highest owned guy from this group. It's Kyle Larson. I mean, he's going to adapt quicker than I think every other driver in this race. Starts fifth. Again, I'm not all that concerned with the starting position. I'm concerned where I think their finish position is. And obviously, as the favorite in this race, no one has more potential to win the race than Kyle Larson. So I'm going to be pretty heavy on Larson as well. Bell starting 15th. That's kind of the middle of the road. I think I mentioned earlier, like we see the winners come out of like the top 15 spots generally. I think that's been the case for the last, I can't tell you how many races. So no one really comes too far from behind. Bell's going to be at the tail end of that range. Again, win odds, not all that great. I don't love Bell. I'll be fairly low on Bell. I think Reddick's an interesting case. Starts second. I think Reddick's going to be pretty good. Again, he's probably been the best driver in the next gen cars on road courses. Starts second here, 9,500. I'm looking at possibly, I've got to look at it after the show and kind of run some numbers, but his price is actually shortened up as well. I think Reddick's going to be very much live to win this race, and I would want him in my DFS lineups. And then you got Elliott, who at one point was probably the best road course racer in the Cup Series. He's kind of fallen off from that level as well. It's funny, I was telling you before the show, and I was talking to Bryce, third and Schlong, and he goes, "Am I nuts here for wanting to take like the top five guys with a Nemechek in my lineups?" And I said, and Chase Elliott would fit in that top five. I don't think you're crazy. And then you said, that sounds pretty good to me as well. So it's an odd race where we might want to take some of these guys starting up front. I like Chase. I like Elliott here in this spot as well, as his history at road course is pretty strong.
Yeah, and I keep running into that, right? I keep running into the fact that like Blaney and Logano and Bowman and Chastain, the guys who are outside this 9K range, keep hitting those lineups, right? I am trying not to be too carried away with that, but that is very much in the realm of possibility. I mean, what we just saw, you can almost treat it like a Formula One slate in a sense of like, I'm just going to play whoever's in front of their teammate or whoever's starting up top. We just had that case in Monaco 2 weeks ago. But like, legitimately, it's a sound strategy. And as much to my dismay, it's worked this season a couple of times. I mean, passing with this next gen car has been tough. And with the repave, I think one of the comments here from Jerry Stack said, it's going to be even harder to pass with no tire wear too. Like, it's in there. I mean, you look at the Xfinity race. I think what was it? Austin Green, I think, was able to move up from 22nd into the top 4, top 5, whatever it was. He was like the one PD guy that you had to have. Everyone else kind of started near the top. There was also a lot of wreckage too that kind of improved that. Like Ty Gibbs, getting into a big accident there. You had a bunch of guys starting inside the top 15, kind of going out of that race. Like, there's a chance that we're just not going to see a whole lot of passing. So I definitely don't want to discount that. I'm thinking I'm going to have more of these guys starting in the 20s, and we're going to get to that range right now. We're going to go ahead and dive into this 8K range. And honestly, I kind of want to lump them together. Instead of lumping them together, we'll just talk about the 8K range, but I do think a lot of these guys have similarities. To me, I didn't update these projections yet, but Chris Buescher is my favorite play in this range here. I do want to go ahead and update them. I'm actually going to go ahead and do that right now. But when we're talking about the 8K range, Chris Buescher is number one to me. Cindric would be very close behind. I think Allmendinger, McDowell are okay. I think Suarez is okay. But I think Chastain would then be the next guy. So let me go ahead and update these projections here. Go ahead and talk about the 8K range and who do you like from there?
Yeah, so I'll start with Suarez just because that would be the easiest and quickest. I think you can kind of toss him out, fade Suarez, just look really slow in practice. So I'm going to toss him out of this range. So then you're kind of left with the other guys. Then you go to the opposite end of the spectrum. You've got Buescher, who I think is the best play on the slate. He will be the highest owned. I think it's a lock button if you're playing cash. I think you have to play. You've got to play Buescher. He's had 12 straight top 11 finishes at road courses. You get the 26th starting position here today. So I think Buescher is definitely a guy that you're going to want to have in your lineups. I don't see any reason to fade him even in GPPs, right?
No.
Allmendinger, there's your guy. Like, there's a guy who frustrates me all. He is the ringer of he's the guy who comes in. You mentioned it. Instead of SVP, we've got Dinger racing here, and he's always a guy that you want to have, that you're going to have interest in road courses, but he is an all or nothing guy. He's coming in to win. He's not coming in here. He's not looking for points. He's coming in to win, and he will race like an animal. He will be there. It's frustrating. I've seen it in the past on road courses. I've had him, and he's in that top 2 or 3, and he will do something that basically, he's going to get super aggressive on a restart and spin himself out with like 2 laps to go, and then, your lineups just go to shit. But he's got the ability to win this race, right? His odds are, I don't know where it is now. He was like 15, 16 to 1. And he's down to like, 14 to 1 at most books. You can get 17 to 1 over at Caesars. So, a legit chance to win the race because he is so strong on these type of courses. But just keep in mind, more of a GPP play than a cash play, because I think he's got tremendous upside, and he could also finish way back down in the pack because he just doesn't care. He's going to try and win this race. McDowell's another guy who's really strong on the road courses, right? But recent road course history, has not finished his last 3. I wouldn't put much weight into that. I think McDowell's another guy who's going to be just trying to win this race, certainly not looking for points. Maybe not the same exact position as Allmendinger, but I think McDowell's another guy who may be very much an all or nothing, strong GPP, type of play. You got Chastain starts 9th. It's going to be a good week for Chevy. I don't like his teammate Suarez, but Chevy's looked obviously pretty good. The odds on them are solid. So I think you have to consider Chastain. His odds 10 to 1 or something, right? Where was he? About 10 to 1 in the betting markets. No, that's gone up. Yeah. Well, he's all over the place. FanDuel's got him at 20.
Yeah, he's 9 to 1 even on DraftKings Sportsbook as of this morning.
Is that right? Is FanDuel 20 to 1? If I'm looking at the right thing. Ooh. That's a little crazy. You might want to just grab that. That's like an off price if he is. If you see him there, just grab it.
Grab that.
Yeah, I'm not looking at FanDuel directly. I'm looking at an aggregator, and if he is, I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to get a piece of that at 20-1 on Chastain, because he's basically 10-1, 12-1 at most books. So at that 20-1 price is probably worth a little bit of a sprinkle there. So, and then Cindric, I mean, listen, I don't know. I know I said last week it was kind of a good, he was starting on that front row last week. I think it surprised us. We were looking at possibly last week it being a little bit crazy with who may be in the winner, and Cindric winning that race, I think surprised a lot of people. It was he was low owned, and I said that might be a good leverage spot to get off of McDowell maybe and get on Cindric. And if you did that, hopefully it worked out for you. Didn't work out for me, so I can't get too excited about it. But good road course driver with a ton of place differential. I think he's another guy. He's a cash play and a GPP option. So kind of like the guys in this range outside of Suarez. And we've got a couple of, I think Buescher is the automatic lock button. I think Dinger, I think you want to go either Dinger or McDowell. I mean, you could certainly do both, but I think I would probably want to take one of them because of the high upside and, the high ceiling, high floor with those guys. And perhaps you're going to throw Cindric in there as well. But like I said, I'm looking for one, maybe two of these big place differential guys. I want these guys who are going to win the race. And I just don't think Cindric necessarily has the upside to win this race. Not like, not like a Buescher. I think Buescher will be at least in the top 10 here when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think Buescher is definitely the one who's the hardest to avoid, right? Like, I think he is just someone that you just plug in, you move on. He's one of the guys of that PD list for me. Like, he's most likely to move up at least a dozen spots at the bare minimum for him, I think. And I honestly think Cindric, being a great road course racer himself, his odds are definitely much worse than Buescher. But I do think Cindric is kind of sneaking this range where I wouldn't be shocked if Cindric is in the top 15 at the end of this race. And I do think that is enough for him, right? I think he has to get 15th or better. To me, he's got the capability here. I think, you know what a win can do for some guys, right? Like, a win can jumpstart him. He goes to a road course where, it should benefit him. It should. And I genuinely think that he keeps the momentum rolling. Obviously, a disappointing, qualifying session there in 28th is going to put him behind the 8-ball. But if anyone can move up the pack, kind of starting in that range, like who's not going to get a ton of ownership either. Even with a win last week and stuff, what are they projecting him? Oh, they're projecting him for 30%. I think that's wrong. I think that a lot of people are going to overlook on Cindric here. Maybe they're expecting people to kind of go for these PD drivers a little bit more, but I do think finishing position will be a strong narrative today. And I think, getting away from, Suarez, I think is the best thing to do. I'm not going to be interested in Suarez, but I will have a ton of Ross Chastain just because I'm betting on talent there. Chastain, great odds to win for the price. And honestly, I think he can move up, and a top 5 would be very much good enough. And I think he doesn't have to do that much. I think a 7th or a 6th place finish could be good enough to be in the winner. What you mentioned about Allmendinger, I think it's worth mentioning here, right? I think this is a very, very unique thing. 2.52 miles is the length of this track. We saw it yesterday. Guys who were like, what was it? Ed Jones is like 15th or whatever, tried to pit before Van Gisbergen could get around the track. He got lapped. Is it possible to pit, especially with extended stages? If you're getting pushed further and further down the pack, can you pit and stay ahead of the leader here, Stats, and ultimately try and flip the stage, and get yourself starting on the front row?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely, that's going to be the key. I think the one guy who does, like Buescher, I think is a guy who I think pitch strategy, he's pretty good at the pitch strategies and gets himself in winning positions. So I kind of like that's just an added bonus, I think, for a guy like Buescher.
And can Buescher do it though, starting 28th, like 26th? I mean, will he be able to do it? And I don't think the answer is yes. I don't think the answer is yes to Gibbs or Allmendinger, or just Allmendinger or McDowell, guys who are going to be going for a win. And Gibbs can be lumped into that category too, because a win gets you into these playoffs. We're already midway through the season. It's almost like ticking time, right? Like, it's almost like you got to get your rear end in gear. Can these guys pit? And I really am questioning that, because the stages are a little bit longer. The chance the leader kind of gets out there a little bit more. What if Reddick overtakes Logano early, who I think we both agree Reddick is going to have more pace than Logano. And if he did get ahead early, and the chances that he's catching up to the back of the field is much stronger. If you don't think, like, let's say you're just building a line, you're like, I don't think these guys can get lapped if they're pitting, right before the stage ends. yes, you should be overweight on Allmendinger and McDowell. But if you do think the case is like, I don't think they're going to be able to pit, like, yeah, I don't get excited for these guys, but it's definitely a strategy that I think is kind of in the unknown. I don't think it's guaranteed by any chance. But we did see an example in the Xfinity Series last night where it didn't work in Ed Jones's favor. He got lapped. He was behind the 8-ball for the entire race after that. Will these guys take that risk? It's the risk reward that you were talking about. It's tournament only. It's guys who are gunning for the wind. I'm very interested to see how this plays out. I don't think either of us have the answer, but it is definitely something that will impact this race heavily, in my opinion. Here, let's move on to the 7K range now. Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Alex Bowman. This is the guys I was telling about. Finishing position matters. I kept throttling Logano down. I was like, oh man, 36, 35 still hitting, 33 still hitting. I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, let's try and remove, finishing position being, way too important. Finishing position just is important, and that's why I'm getting a lot of these guys. But we do have good PD guys here. I think Kyle Busch is a very, very solid PD play. It's going to be a great cash play. Someone who you can kind of rely on. You got second here last year too. The repave is definitely, a little bit of that caveat there. We don't want to rely too much on course history, but I can rely on Kyle Busch to potentially move up this pack. Guys who look good in practice. Will Brown, I think, get the third fastest individual practice time. The Australian at 7,200, starting 24th, could be fine. I don't really know what to do with this pair of Australians. Cam Waters is Australian too. Starting 31st, starting 24th. They have the potential to be good PD plays. There's just a lot of unknowns with them stats. And I don't know if you've had too much of a chance to look at those two guys, but potentially I like them more than Keselowski just off the rip, because I think with Keselowski, you're going to get a fine PD play who's just not good enough to be in the winner. I mean, that's my opinion on Keselowski today. I'm going to fade in large field tournaments. But with Waters and Brown, I think maybe they have the upside. And then the rest of those guys in this range, 7K range is stacked. Good finishing position, and Kyle Busch with good PD play. Like, all these guys are on my radar here outside of Keselowski here.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And I think Keselowski is going to wind up being higher owned than both of the Aussie drivers. And then if we want to just between the two, I mean, Brown's got the better odds and seems to have the better car. Waters doesn't seem to he seems to be pretty slow this week. So I will be a little bit more cautious with Waters, but I think Brown, you've got some upside. You've got, it's a high risk reward play, I think, with a guy like Brown. But if it was going to lean towards one of those guys, he would be the one that I'd be more apt to take. And I agree with you. For a guy who I think is going to be a decent cash play, or a pretty strong cash play, because he's starting 35th. I don't love Keselowski in GPPs this week. He's never been a great road course guy, and I don't see as much upside as maybe the market is. So I think he can get under the market on. I didn't look at where Saber is on Keselowski, but if I'm thinking he's in the 20% range, and that's actually, yeah. So Saber's at what, like 18, 19%, something like that. Yeah, I don't mind getting under, or that's, I'm always speaking about 150 lineups. If you're playing in less than that, I don't mind not playing him at all and going with a total fade. I think one of the guys who's super interesting, another place differential guy, is Kyle Busch. Yeah. Kind of what do you do with Kyle Busch? But when you look at his odds, another guy starting 29th, and like we've said, I'm not going to be high on all these place differential guys. And if you're kind of going, I think a lot of the very casual NASCAR fan kind of looks at who's starting in the back. They kind of put an emphasis. They see the name Kyle Busch. They see Brad Keselowski. They're like, oh, I'm going to lock button these guys with place differential. I don't think that's going to be in the winning lineup. And you look at Busch at like 66-1 plus 6,600 at some books. Looking at it now. Yeah, I can't find him unless. Oh yeah, here he is. Yeah, plus 6,600 at most books. BetMGM plus 6,600. He's a little shorter over at FanDuel. Yeah, I think that's a good fade. I think we've got some guys. There's not going to be super high owned anyone this week. You're going to have a lot of guys in that 20 to 25% range, and I think it's just a matter of picking which one of them. And again, I would lean more towards where I think these guys could finish. I just don't see Kyle Busch having a real strong finish in a race like this. And who knows? He could even finish this thing backwards in negative from 29th. So I feel pretty good about being under the market on Kyle Busch. I think now, it leads you to the last couple of guys here in this group, or last three guys, let's say. You've got the Penske teammates. You've got Logano. You've got Blaney. And Logano's starting front row, first position. He's got the pole. He's good. Like, a lot of people are just like, they're a little. I think you even said it. You're like, oh, yeah, I'm getting a little too much Logano when I'm running my builds here. The risk you're going to have is Reddick jumps out. Reddick's probably the better road course guy. Reddick jumps out there and just kind of he never looks back, and you don't get any of these laps led. But 7,300 with a guy who can win this race and could lead a bunch of laps, as it's going to be tough to pass. I kind of like Logano. I think their cars. I think Penske is pretty fast here, and his Penske teammate Blaney at 7,800. He's not really a road course guy. You don't think about Blaney when you think about road courses. But who knows? I mean, if you might be able to play, like if they figured something out here, they're the teammates again with the repave, and I think Logano's going to figure the track out really well. Maybe they look good in practice. Maybe the both of them have a good strategy. You might want to play them together, which is what we talked about earlier with playing like the guys in the top five. But maybe these are guys you want to play that. We'll play the teammates. We'll play first and third start position and hope that these guys kind of have this track figured out better than everyone else does. So I don't mind that play at all. I think Bowman's an interesting one where he's not being owned all that much. He was, he's got the speed. He's got a team. Hendricks, he's got speed with that car, with that team, and I think he's going to be a sneaky under-owned play. So I kind of like Alex Bowman here, and I'm actually looking towards the betting markets as well. I haven't made those decisions on who my final bets are going to be, but at his price, I think he was like at plus 15. You get plus 2,000 on him as well over at FanDuel, which is just, to me, is just a phenomenal price. So that's another guy on FanDuel that I think you want to take a shot at. So the plus 2,000 on him, I would take that at FanDuel. I think he could be sneaky and a guy who's just not going to be high owned. He's kind of in a tricky spot starting 8th, but there's no reason. I mean, he finishes up near the top with some lead laps. I think he's in the winner if he does that, and he's not too far off when you look at the betting market. So I kind of like Bowman more, I think, than the market does right now.
Would you consider this? I think last week was very much a strategy race at the end all be all. It was very much a strategy race. You saw guys, especially teammates up there, and when Blaney ended up running out of gas, it just killed everything I had. I was looking good, then it just kind of killed. But would you consider this like a strategy race? Because we mentioned it, like, not only performance of each car and stuff, but what if Logano and Blaney on the same strategy, all of a sudden they just get it right? Do you think that could be a factor here in today's race?
Yeah, I 100% do. Like, I think strategy is important with most of these races. I think it'll be important here today. I mean, that's why I think, with a single entry, I don't mind throwing in the teammates there and taking a shot that maybe they've got it figured out and their strategy plays out and works well. So I don't think that's a bad idea.
I love it. Jason,
I love this. I just saw that comment. Yeah.
How do you get 60 to 1 on both? How do they hang 60 to 1 on a road course?
Good job picking that off.
Oh, that'll be good stuff there. Hopefully you can get the dub there. That would be really awesome to see. Let's go ahead and move on to the 6K range here. So we spent a lot of time talking about the 8K, the 9K, 7K, 10K range, right? I'm not going to have too many words here. I don't think I'm going to have a lot to say, but I will say I'm done underestimating Justin Haley. Like, I'm just done doing it. Like, he could be starting 15th on an oval, and I'll be interested. And I'm sure as hell going to be interested in him starting 27th in a range that's very weak. I think Haley's the best in this range. He was very solid at Coda too. Like, he did a good job there. I think he did well here last year as well. Like, I'm very fine with it, and I don't really think I can say that about a whole bunch of guys. Like, okay, Bubba Wallace, he's fine. The odds aren't great. Carson Hocevar, can he hold position starting 13th? Maybe. Gilliland, same thing. Like, you're banking on guys holding position. With Haley, you're banking on him being able to improve that position. And that's what gives him the leg up over these guys. I don't get excited. Maybe you can sell me on Nemechek, but Nemechek's another guy. It's where I just have a lot of bad memories of him on road courses where he just gets into issues. He shoots himself in the foot often, and there's a reason why he's starting 37th, and he just hasn't gotten his footing yet this season at all. But what about this 6K range for you here, Stats?
Yeah, it's a pretty pitiful range. I mean, I agree. I think Nemechek probably winds up being the highest owned in this group, just because of his starting position of 37th. He's going to be in a lot of cash lineups as well. But yeah, I mean, you could easily fade. I think you can really fade this entire group and kind of play. I think we've got enough. We've got enough guys in kind of the mid range where I think that's where we're going to see the winning lineup be more mid than necessarily stars. This is not a stars and scrubs type of race. So I think a lot of you are going to be fading this group. But I think of the entire group, Nemechek would probably be the guy that's going to be the most known. And I agree with you. I think Haley then becomes that second guy. You know, he's a decent road course racer. So there's the potential there. He's starting 27th. I agree with you, Nemechek. I mean, we could be really disappointed here, but if you're going to have a lineup where you got to kind of squeeze in some salary, if you do what we were talking about with taking some of these guys who are starting up top, Nemechek might be the best guy to fit in there. But I'm trying to just kind of run through. I think you're basically going to fade all of these guys except Haley, Nemechek, and I think maybe you can make a case for Priest as well, being able to use him in some of your lines. So if you're looking for some guys down here to kind of fill in, I would use one of those three guys and almost want to fade the rest of this group down here.
So I'm going to make a very bad shout, and you can definitely make fun of me for this. I like Kaz Gralla in the 5K range. He's a road course guy by nature. The car sucks. I mean, we know that. But if you get a little bit of attrition, maybe he can move his way up the pack. But also, I have faith in him being able to improve his spot from 36. Like, I think he can get ahead of Hemrick. I think he can get ahead of guys like Stenhouse and stuff. He's a road course guy. If you were really wanting to make this a stars and scrubs like kind of vibe, or you really need the salary, I am fine with Kaz Gralla in this range. Like, I 100% would be good with him. Do I really want to get carried away with it? No. Do I really want to do it in the main lineup? No. But if I am making a few, Kaz Gralla definitely has a chance to be in there. He definitely ranks well ahead of these guys, starting 36. It's just a matter of, can the car hold up? I would actually take him over Nemechek. But again, I think the equipment is definitely in Nemechek's favor. But talent-wise, Kaz Gralla is probably up there in the top 15 at road courses. Like, if you gave him a good car, I think he could get a top 15 at a road course. It's just equipment sucks, but he can get there. I think starting 36, he can move up. He's a guy I think who would be a very outside chance moving up 10 spots, but in this range, I feel like he would be the most likely to do that, and that's important here. Everyone else in this 5K range, I mean, maybe Burton, because Burton made one team where it filled out all 50K salary and it felt fine, but it was super gross. I don't really want to get behind that. Maybe Zane Smith holding position at starting 20th, like Corey LaJoie, same thing. They're okay, but Kaz Gralla to me is head and shoulders above anyone else in this 5K range. And that doesn't include Nemechek. I mean, I would take Kaz Gralla over Jones too, despite, starting, behind him. It's a gross range. You got to do gross things, right, Stats?
Yeah. I mean, that's how you win the big money. I mean, it's never a lineup that you're like, that's exactly the lineup I was going to play. It's always like, how the hell did that guy have that, that driver in there? So yeah, you got to do some gross things if you're going to win the big one.
Yep. Let's go ahead, and we got a question here about a parlay. It's a lengthy one here, Stats. Bear with me. Elliott, top Chevy. McDowell, top Ford. Bell, top Toyota. Do you like those?
I mean, do I like it at plus 16,025? I mean, at the price, do I think it's going to win? No, but is it a decent price? I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. I think I could see the Elliott. I think you're getting some upside there with McDowell. I think that's a risky one. And Bell, I mean, not necessarily a bet I would make, but I think the price is okay.
I think Bell's the only one I just really hate. Like, I genuinely don't see him improving. I think you can make the case for Elliott, McDowell, but Bell, the guy I'm fading. I'm completely fading on the slate. Like I think starting 15th, I think a lot of people might see like, oh, sneaky PD can gain spots, but in reality, I think he finishes 15th or worse. So it'll be fun. But his car has been a rocket ship. We didn't even get the chance to talk about what he did last week. That's what was it, a cylinder going down or something like that? Engine just crapping out there in that battle with Blaney. I thought that was one of the best racing duels that we've seen this season. Genuinely, I loved every bit of that. I loved it until Blaney ran out of gas. But when Cindric, got the win too, it just a crazy race there last week. So I will say Bell has been in a good form. I could see that continuing, but not here this week. No, next oval I'll be back on Bell. That's for sure. Let's go ahead and get into our drivers of the day here. We're going to use SaberSim's ownership, 20% or less. Again, code RPS15, 15% off your first purchase here at Run Pure Sports. And you can get access to SaberSim if you want. You can get their ultimate package. You can also just get their regular package as well, which includes sims, but not contest sims either. Let's go ahead and get into this drivers of the day. So anyone here, I got Ty Gibbs is the lowest of the, or highest of the under 20% guys. So anyone from this list that intrigues you, stats, and we'll get into our drivers of the day, and then we'll head out of here.
So you've got Ty Gibbs under 20%?
Yeah, Ty Gibbs would be under 20%. All these guys here are above 20%. So ownership is spread out. So we're not going to get too many guys.
Yeah, I think Ty Gibbs winds up being higher owned than that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to actually I would normally take Ty Gibbs. I think he's going to wind up being higher owned. So I want to give you a guy who like flashes at like 16% ownership or something like that when it's all said and done. So I'm going to go with Bowman as that guy. Is that your guy?
Nah, no.
Oh, that's who you thought I was going with? Yeah.
You talked him up. You said 16%. I'm like, that's in the ballpark. I was hovering over Bowman. I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. I'm gonna go that way because I think I think it's going to take a win here or in the top 3, something like that. But I think he's capable of it. I like the odds, and I think being overlooked right now in the DFS market. So I'll take a shot with Bowman at 7,500.
Yeah, I like it. Bowman was definitely on my radar for this choice too. I don't know if I'm going to have Ross Chastain in my main lineup, but for pure leverage, I am going to go to him. I went with him last week too, so we're on the Ross Chastain wagon here for a bit. I might cut up some watermelon in his honor. Eat some watermelon. Hopefully Ross Chastain ends up getting a W. He smashes it on the track there at the end of the race. Ross Chastain is my guy. I think starting 9th, I definitely think he can improve upon that position. And he also is in a very in-between range. I talked about it. I want finishing position here that's good. You got a lot of good PD guys around him. You got Busch, you got Cindric, you got Busher. They're all great plays. You also got Logano, who's probably going to get some more ownership than Chastain. You got Ryan Blaney is probably going to get a little bit more ownership than him. I really like going to Chastain here, starting 9th. Love him and Bowman even paired together. It's not something I'm going to go away from at all. I'm not going to have any rules on inside the top 10 either. But I will try and mix in the PD guys when I can. Got my core posted. Stats, you're going to have your stuff posted here soon too. Again, Run Pure Sports, RPS 15% off here, with that code. So let's go ahead and head out of here. Again, Alex Bowman, his driver of the day, Ross Chastain, our low-owned driver of the day here too. So have a great rest of y'all's day.